You cannot put land into a trust. You can put a car of a title into a trust. You can put gold and silver. The trust can have a gold certificate and put a lien against property. So we give you quantum reasons and quantum usages, but I find that there's very few people that actually have a legitimate reason to have a trust. But for people that do want to get a trust, I charge $5,000 for one, because when I originally got into the trust business, I studied that for 6 years of my life. And I went ahead and I took 38 of the most popular trusts where there's been 2 or more million trusts written, like the Boston Trust and the Panama Trust. And I took all the best things out of all of those, quantumized them, and then we put our own material in there as a lesson plan. So what happens is, in the world of fiction, when you're a trustee of somebody else's trust. In the world of fiction, you can't be the manager of your own trust. In our trust, because they're quantum, you are the trustee of that trust. You put the commands of that trust in the minutes of the trust. Now, whatever it is you wish to do, you have to send to me as the creator, and I quantumize it. So it's a no-brainer when it comes to breaking it all down into an understanding of communication. So I monitor all trusts that I have in the market. They have taken, the IRS has tried, and the federal government has tried to take these into federal court, then they will not allow them into court because they don't have copyright releases to move into quantum. And they don't have a single law, rule, regulation, or code anywhere of the 4 billion United States codes to create any joinder with the quantum trusts. So if you want to protect certain things and you want it to last your entire life or for your family, you can do a quantum trust. But you have to prove to me that you understand quantum, that you understand what you're doing, because otherwise you're not a trustee.
Yeah.
So you can be a beneficiary too, trustee and beneficiary?
The beneficiary part of that will be written into the trust with quantum language.
Okay. So the same person, so I could be a trustee and beneficiary?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, you could.
Because it's written in correct grammar.
Got to
Good
be.
idea.
Got to be able to switch hats.
All right.
All right, we're going to get into a little bit about some of the other things that have been created on the quantum banking side that we don't get a chance to talk about much. First is the Passographic Treaty. What that is that are it's the closure on what your C treaty, on the communication that we're using, the functions that we're using, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, your alphabets, your mathematical functions, and it's an educational that's filed in a timely manner through the Global Bureau of the Weights and Measures. The Global Bureau of the Weights and Measures, the adverb world calls it, adjective pronoun world calls it the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. This is the location where countries and nations, through their Secretary of State's office and their government printing office, create the legislation for the terms and rules in which they choose to communicate under passography, which is one country to another. And this is all held in trust to the International Maritime Organization, who David and I just corrected their charter out of London. And that contract is filed in London at the International, or the Global Maritime Company. They call it the International Maritime Organization, and the Global Bureau of the Weights and Measures. And this is the description of how we move things, elements, and matter in our banking construct in our own periodic function form to create matter. The periodic tables on the planet, when I first came forward with this, all periodic tables on the planet were in a box. Anything in a box is omitted. So I put it in a tetrahedron with a monoatomic periodic table built into the middle of that on the monoatomic level. So I claimed both 33 atom clusters and a reduced common denominator isotopes of atomic numbers and atomic matters through specific gravity, boiling point, weights and measurements. We looked at a lot of other things that are built into the periodic table. I'm kind of proud of that one because when I published that one, Department of Defense and the NSA grabbed me off the streets, and CIA was actually there too, and had a talk for about 3 hours just about what that meant for them, for their banking system. Their banking system was built on AU. their AU, which their scientists believe to be correct, and their PT, and their elements that they were using to use as tangible commodities to bank were all fictitiously conveyed, and none of their scientists, all their scientists on the planet lost jurisdiction over my banking matter and the things that I was making. So it kind of like, wow, you're Nikola Tesla. I was like, no, I'm Russell-J. Colin Gould, and just trying to be correct here. Nobody has filed a correctness in the way that they've presented their command for their monetary systems that they've created. So that was done. It's kind of exciting for me to talk about. I don't get to talk about it a lot. It took me 1 year to write the periodic table. It took me a lot of research. Now I took out some elements that could be manipulated. Einsteinium, Berkeleyum, something that when you had to bombard molecular structure and electrons to collide things, to make, so all of a sudden you see it for a nanosecond, there it is. Those things were taken out of my periodic table. So we use things in its natural function and form. So that's where that was. And then on the monoatomic level, a lot of people study David Hudson and some of the other people out there doing monoatomic elements. But they try to file for patents, but we don't traverse with their patents when we spin what we call the trons or toms. You guys call them atoms. We call them toms. Actually, the contract itself was called Finding-Tom. Is actually what the treaty name was, because atom, of course, is a vowel, and we don't use vowels in front of it.
A vowel is a single syllable. The start of a word means vowel.
Yeah, so these were things that we did because David and I had filed a contract, the Global Banking Constitution, in 2003, and it dealt with me identified as the comptroller of the global-postal-currency. And so it was my job to find out what currency and monies were, the value and association, so I didn't traverse into the adverb verb world so nobody could accuse me of anything, so I could then become knowledgeable on how to identify specific things and specific matters to take command and put them in our banking system, the things that I showed you last time with the savings clause claims. Kind of did this in reverse order, but you can kind of see where I was going with the global construct of this, because that way when I walked into a bank, I didn't traverse, because the banker's going to pick up the phone and say, hey, do we have this hallmarked? You know, who assigned the seigniorage, which is the numerology, the passography, the Droog law, the Bureau of Weights and Measures of identifying the values of monies. So I filed this as comptroller of the global currency with my own periodic table. In each contract, we always put the global of the weights and measures, so we are the only ones to identify the sums and differences of the values, which is it hasn't been done on the planet before, not to my knowledge. I haven't seen it done. Every banker I've talked to does says I don't even know what you're talking about. So they pick up the phone and try to get answers. Well, what's the first rule of banking? Knowledge. You have to have knowledge of what you're doing. So these are some of the reasons why I kind of went so heavy the last 7 years in studying the monetary systems and how to make and the function of isolating specific matters. And we're getting very good at it now. And but the outside world can't interface with what we're doing because they're at the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. That's where I'm going with this. Not about what I'm doing, but their ability to say what we have. They're synthetic again. We went back to the synthetic position because they vacated their establishment for the statement of a claim. So that's kind of exciting about that. And your passography treaty is very, very important because that deals with your education on how you give closure for your communication. We use the functions of prepositional phrases. We have a cipher key code at the beginning to identify the order of operations of things. And then we look at things in the quantum variables from the outside down to the least common denominator, which is very exciting. And by giving closure with the passography treaty, it gives us our global-communications. So when we go into a bank, we go into another country, and if you guys choose to elect us in as directors here, presidents here with this next election, these are the areas we're going to go to so that when other countries state a claim about what we owe them, number one, we have the capability to do what David was talking about earlier with our lawsuits, let alone what we have the ability to do with our commodities. And David and I, when we were at the Vatican, I filed a seniorage-treaty dealing with my capability to hallmark, and that is to put the claim on what the value on the money, or on the gold or silver or platinum. So I have the authorization as a sovereign to articulate those functions. And I'm very good in my skill set there for outside companies that are looking to do a 4671 salvage on their fraudulent gold, because they have to call it of gold or of very fine gold. They can't say of the gold. They can't say of the platinum. They can't say of the silver, because their identification on their hallmarking for weights and measures, 0.999 or 5 nines or whatever they're running, is all in compliance with the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. So they're in adjective, pronoun form, verb form construct, where the platform has already been created for those to transship over, and to transshipment is taking a cargo from one location and putting it into a different location. It's a shipping term called transshipment. And so we have our clearance through knowledge of what we're doing. So if nations join with our program and join with what we're doing, there's certain specific authorizations through our weights and measures, through our periodic tables, and through our ability to find ourselves and graft ourselves in time and space through our postal station contracts, that we can give closure nation to nation and peoples to people, so it benefits the peoples of the world. So these are some of the functions that have been put in place for the Directors Party and for the citizens to know that there are solutions out here for us, and there are solutions for all of you to join with. And it's about your education, knowing that these functions have been put in place and are already grandfathered in on specific contracts in specific key locations around the world, so that as banking, IMF and World Bank, and as we get their contracts lined out, these are some of the functions with those who are watching on YouTube. These will be some of the authorizations that they can go look for, the people in the know. But the people in the top already mostly know all this stuff, because we did this, we've been at it I've been at it 19 years now, so it's a long time.
So voting you gentlemen into our Oval Office of our White House, you guys can ship all the current treaties, trusts, and any legislature, etc.
Yeah, legislation itself. The legislation itself, one of the first things that David and I would do is we would go into the House, into the Senate, surround them with the military so that it can't run out, because usually they're too busy running from us, so that would be a change of pace to make sure they couldn't run. And we would sit them down, and one of the functions that needs to be done is for them to learn how to do it correct. And then we're going to move they're no longer going to be doing business in Washington, D.C. They will come to Washington, D.C. when it's time for them to do business, but they're going to go back out, and they're going to go learn what the pulse of the people are. So they're going to go back, and their job location is going to be in their specific territories, not in Washington, D.C. And the thing of lobbyists is a done thing. As far as I'm concerned, that's over. Lobbyists is not a valid situation, because the people's choice of who they show as their proving of who they are and who they entrust to be in that position to speak for the people must be from the pulse of the people and from the speaking of the people. So those people, those senators and all those people in cozy jobs, that all has to change, and they need to step out into the layman world to figure out what the people's needs are. Because upon knowing what the people's needs are, then they can come back. They can then get together and create their legislation, pass their postal bills up through the proper protocols, which I am strangely, this is going to sound interesting to you guys, I'm a legislator at the Washington Federal Register, and for those of you who want to come see it, it's over here. Don't have time to show you guys, but it's in that packet there, and I shut down the House and Senate in 2005. They put under a passing bill to close the United States Senate and the United States House of Representation, and they put their certified seals for both the House and Senate on the back of each one of my pages, and I put my autograph through that, and then they registered it in the Federal Register. That way the House and the Senate couldn't pass any laws against the quantum grammar and the quantum people that are moving forward here in this program. So that was done in 2005 and recorded through the Federal Register, so that was a pretty neat function as well for all of you to join with. So to answer your question is that the senators and the representatives of the people will have a different type of function, and they will learn how to pass laws, bring legislation. Also, one of the terms of the legislation that we're going to see to it is that the laws that they pass do not interfere with, and that's not a good word, do not block the happiness and the prosperity and the gain of the people. That is a very valid point for how we choose to articulate our laws and our rules and our regulations. Because upon that, the people then can now feel free that the laws that are being written do not infringe upon their right to happiness, their face, and the things that they all have the right to. So these are things that are coming up with the Directors Party, and it's going to be a new thing for Washington D.C., I'm sure. And they're going to, we'll lead by the sample of our lives. We will also be out amongst the people and figure out what they want, and as well as the global community, because the global community needs a lot of financial solutions, and definitely I with certainty have that.
So you see the corporate lobbyists as a subversion of the natural act, the way laws are supposed to be created from the ground up. They're being subvertibly backdoored behind closed doors, even with secret handshakes at sometimes, and the people have no idea what's going on.
I'm not privy to any of that. What I'm saying is that the people and the people that they put into those positions, senators and their representatives, those people need to be amongst their peers and the people that put them there to articulate and find out what they want, and then at that point come back to Washington, D.C., and we'll roll them out on tranche. We'll tranche them in and out of there. That will be run by me on specific. I'm very funny about time, so I'll roll them in and out of there under specific mustering and specific manifests into specific fields. You still have the committees, but the committees will have the concepts of the people.
If you gentlemen aren't elected as directors for the presidential campaign here this year, will you be moving into any other venue to support the American people?
We are looking at this more of a global situation. So not only running here, but running simultaneously elsewhere. And so we're going to continue to run and continue to educate for basically every 4 years, or at least until the people have comprehension, because this has some valid solutions to it, and the people of the world really need to take into consideration. There's been a lot of hard work put into this program by David and myself, and many others, not just us, but many others have put some definite value and some definite hard time into this, and they need to see some of the benefits of what can be. Any other questions about any of that?
How could you be stopped, I guess, if they're all in fiction, and as long as people vote for you are correct?
Well, the nice thing about that is in my statement of the candidacy with the Federal Elections Commission, I'm already with the statement of the victory.
See, when Russell and I were in court way back in Madison, Wisconsin, the judge had been on the bench for 38 years. And for the first time in that judge's history, he came off the bench and he sat across the table from Russell for 2 hours. His bailiff walked up to him afterwards and said, "That judge has never left the bench. You're the first person he ever showed the honor to get off his bench and have a conversation with you." He took off his robe, sat there in his business suit, and said to Russell, and I was there watching, because it was Russell's trial, and the judge said to him, "You're absolutely correct in everything you're doing, except I'm going to stay in my fiction and you stay in your fact. This is fact and fiction can never meet." He says, "My army's bigger than yours. You can keep what you can hold. That's the rule of nature." King Saddam Hussein said, "I'm a king and I have sovereignty. I have my own country. You don't belong over here in Iraq." So Bush went ahead and said, "Oh yeah?" In 6 days, killed 125,000 of his civilians, blew up 98% of his infrastructure, and destroyed his entire army. Going, "You're dead right."
Yeah.
The point is, you can keep what you can hold. And because the war was fought by Schwarzkopf, And we lost 40 of our troops by friendly fire because of a couple helicopters crashed. We didn't lose any of our own troops by foreign fire. And at that point in time, with our stealth technology, the Russians said, if you can't see the enemy, how are we going to fight him? We'll just let you sort this all out till our technology comes up to speed. But the technology today is not about how much manpower you have in the field. It isn't about how many guns or how big your bombs are or anything else. You guys know about the zapper, right? We use the zapper to kill viruses, Hulda Clark's technology. The new game on this planet is called a satellite with a frequency zapper. Everyone heard about the 1 square mile of fish dying in the Mississippi River, of only a specific species called the suckers. 1 square mile of bees falling out of the air, 1 square mile of bats, only one species being killed. When you go through the scanners in the airport, the only thing they have to do is read the DNA frequency of your heart timer, which is about this big. And from outer space, 260 miles above it, send down a zapper frequency to kill the DNA frequency of your heart timer. And you fall over. And with 10 billion people standing in front of the machine going through the frequencies, reading your DNA frequency, they're saying this isn't radioactive, it's just a radio wave. Won't hurt you.
Always opt out.
Collecting all the information of all human species on the planet through the scanner.
You do, huh?
And now they've got 2 satellites up there orbiting planet Earth. And if they want to go to war or remove a specific species, and they did it 38 times in the course of 6 months. Here in Russia, they did it over in Europe, they did it all over the United States, they did it in China, they did it all over the place. And they picked out 1 square mile at a time. Imagine an entire army of one culture. Could be on a ship, could be on land. They just hit it with a beam for 6 minutes, and all the DNA crystalline of their heart timers stop, and the entire army falls down. You have all their equipment to go and pick up. No trauma, no gas, no chemical weapons, nothing. Just a DNA frequency timer shut down on your heart. Autopsy will not show anything because they don't have autopsies that can read DNA. Not at that level. Not at that specificness. So they don't need a big army. They don't need a big navy. They don't need a big anything. They keep it because it's old school. But they have all this new technology. They have lasers, they have particle beams, they have sound, they have the HAARP.
That's old school?
Huh?
The frequency is old?
No.
No, the frequency zapper has been out 3 years now, the satellite's been up.
How do you protect yourself?
I do not know which group it is, but I do know they do exist. I have friends. I have information. There's been many times through the last 20 years of my lecturing that I've told the government, like your Big Ten in San Francisco here in the San Andreas. We had 3 years where the temperature was 40 degrees above normal on a North American plate. And at the end of the 3rd year, I told them that the temperature was, and this is in March, temperature was 85 in Milwaukee and almost 100 degrees in Austin, Texas. I told them you've had 1,000 days to heat up the North American plate, and El Nino was on the Pacific plate, covering over 2 million square miles. When 2 plates heat up, San Andreas has got to go bang. And it would have been a 10 on the Richter scale, wiping out the entire west coast of the United States. So I told them, I says, you know, your oil wells that are 18,000 feet deep along the San Andreas have been accelerating in temperature and they're exceeding 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I says, and they've been accelerating at 10 to 15 degrees per day. You need to shut down the pressure of the United States, which means you have to drop the temperature 85 degrees. It must be 25 below zero in Milwaukee for 22 days. It must be below freezing in Austin, Texas for 22 days. 72 hours later, the entire temperature of the United States of America was dropped, where it was below freezing in Texas for exactly 22 days, and in Wisconsin was below zero for 22 days. At the same time that happened, they had to change the wind which blows over the Yucatan Peninsula from east to west from west to east, bringing El Nino up to California and reversing the wind at 50 miles an hour for 22 days to blow El Nino offshore and bring in the cold water from 3 miles down and cool down the Pacific plate. And that wind blew 50 miles an hour for 22 days. I gave them a public answer to a problem, told them situations that they had that was impossible. They said it was impossible for me to know the information that I gave them. But when they did the research in the next 72 hours, they found out not only that it was very accurate, but how did I know this? So knowing things that I wasn't supposed to know about things that can't possibly be known, they went ahead and they took my advice and they dropped it, and they watched all the temperatures on the oil wells in California drop 400 degrees. All the pressure was released. Okay.
How do you explain the whole California drought thing that they've been milking people for?
The drought is now 1,000 days old around in the valley.
Is that because of they're messing with it, or?
Yeah, that's all HARP, and that's in the North Pacific. Now, I've been living in Hawaii for 3 years. I just moved back to Wisconsin the 15th of December.
Now, is that going to change?
And I've been
anything?
watching weather systems 4,000 miles by 6,000 miles in size from Hawaii all the way up to Anchorage. And these are big, look like hurricanes.
Yeah.
The one right after the other going on. And each one of them are bypassing California.
Yeah.
It's pulling all the moisture up into the Yucatan,
Oh.
up into the Yukon area. And then the Alberta Clipper brings it back down and dumps it on the Midwest and then up in the Northeast, where Boston's got 79 inches
Yeah.
of snow on the ground right now.
So how do we bring that down
So-
to where we need it?
Right, well, they've had a few rainstorms, but then when they did have rain, they had so much rain here in Sacramento. You guys just about got washed away here a few weeks ago, I heard. They had like 14 or 18 inches of rain here in one day. But it's, they gotta watch because they dried the ground out so hard it wouldn't absorb water. So then when it finally rained, you had flash floods and you had a lot of problems that way. So there's the HARP. They have been playing around with HARP, and they used to use HARP. And when I knew about it, I used to day trade HARP for oil and energy costs. And when I was over in China, in Beijing, in October of 2012, I was in a restaurant with a bunch of bankers, and we were sitting around this big round table, 10 people. It's a real exclusive restaurant, and one of the bankers said, "Hey, David, I understand you're a day trader." I says, "Yeah." He says, "Do you have any advice for me?" And we had roughly 200 people in the restaurant, clanking silverware, glasses, drinking, banging, waiters talking, people talking, and like that, you could hear a pin drop. It was absolute silence as I told how to day trade sunspots and oil futures, and how it affects, sunspots affect how much radiation the earth gets for all food products or grains, to affect doing grain trading, and how the price of oil, where if we lose 15% of our radiation from the sun, it's going to be colder, we're going to have higher rainfall, higher yields on food, but then the rain is going to cause other types of problems. You're going to have some yields higher, some yields lower because of loss of sunlight, but the atmosphere is going to be 6 degrees colder, which is going to require more hydrocarbon burning. So the price of fuel is going to go up, and the price did go up. And after I explained how to trade sunspots, he says, "Well, that's all I got to say about that." The whole restaurant was instant noise. Like when E.F. Hutton talks and everybody freezes. I kid you not, they actually happened to me. Everybody froze as I was talking about that one topic. But it was like everyone in that room was in on it. Every single person that was there was in some kind of banking, stock trading, money management. And when a federal judge from America, who does 2,200 trades a year, makes a statement, of course they're going to listen, because they don't know what's going on in America. But then in the week that followed, the meetings that I had, I was treated very favorably with meeting people, and been invited from one meeting after another meeting after another meeting, where people wanted one-on-one time to get more of this information. Because the banking, always follow the money, folks. You got a problem, follow the money. And you're gonna find out where the corruption comes. What are we doing here,
I'm
Bello?
just doing I'm doing a mailbox presentation for them under postage, some of the
Okay.
things going on there.
You ready?
Because, yeah, sure.
Just a quick question on the claiming of life. You were saying you can't send like saliva or blood
Right.
on a letter, but just by touching it, there's going to be biological.
No, I know,
material
that's, no, they're just saying blood because of AIDS and saliva because of AIDS.
Yeah.
Those are only your two things, and then you've got things like Ebola, or certain type of diseases can be transmitted, like the measles outbreak you've got out here now.
The
That
idea
has
is-
to be through physical contact.
But the idea is you're supposed to have some biological material
Not
on
on
that
paper.
claim of life, or
That's why we tell people, when you put the biological on there, either blood or saliva, you seal it with a plastic. Once it's sealed, like I do with my oats,
oh,
that's because those are handled a lot. I pass them around, people look at them, they're years they've been handled. Those need to be put in plastic so they're preserved. You know this document here I held up? This here is an original 12/21/2012 document, just like the original Constitution of the United States of America. And Russell and I need to take these and put these in plastic or some form of archives, because in 200 years these things are going to be worth a lot of money. This is the original, these are the original documents of quantum, the original documents of an oath to start this whole process from 12/21/2012.
That's the first one? That's the very first one?
We
Yeah.
both have originals.
Well-
We both had about 3 copies of the originals besides those we filed with the government. The point is, they're originals.
Yeah.
And there's no substitute for the original. You know, letters that George Washington wrote in 1776 are trading at Christie's for $2.5 million a paper.
So you're saying the autographs I got from you guys are gonna be like
Yeah,
George Washington
those
and
are-
Benjamin Franklin's
There's
autographs?
only, you know, there's 9 billion people on this planet, and there's only 2 of us, and we control all the
All right,
technology.
glad I did this.
All right, well, anyways, a lot of
Okay, you
people,
got it.
a lot of people are moving around. And as you move around, you're setting up your mail, because your bills have to be paid and you're getting your mail. So you're gonna go down and file they call a change of address form with the United States Postal Service. Now, you can do it, what I do is I just fill out their form, because you gotta have some kind of joiner there, and I put the word domicile on it. It'll have your name, location, and what I do is I put a $1 postage stamp on there where you autograph your name. So you put the $1 stamp on there, you autograph through it, and I put my claim of the life number through there, as well as some other corporation claim numbers. And then I present it to them, but before I give it to them, I have them cancel the stamp. So they cancel the stamp. Of course, they'll never give me a copy of it at that point, but I know what's going on. And then you change your mailing location. Then in 72 hours after you do that, your mailing location is changed, and it's called the mailbox rule. And under the mailbox rule, when you have a quantum joinder between fact and fiction location or position, the mailbox is only voluntary. You have to comprehend that. So if you have a mailbox out on your property and you don't have a contract for it, it's only your presumption to walk up to it, to open up your mail, to pick it out. But when you file under mailbox rule, that is your mailbox rule, and the terms which you choose to have governance on your life can be placed out of that mailbox rule. And the timelines that you use for those locations are very, very important, that you keep the continuance of the evidence on. And that comes with your postage stamps, which are paid on your contracts for the bills of lading, so that when you get mail in that mailbox, you autograph the stamp across there, right? Even if it's a franking stamp. A franking stamp means it's a metered stamp, for those who don't know what that is. You autograph across that stamp, makes you postmaster of that domicile, and as postmaster of that domicile, you are engaged in freight waybills, transit waybills, and switching waybills, because you're using that mailbox as a station. And your capability to have that mailbox under your land claims, land pass and sea pass, is relevant to that location. What I do is I file that with a letter of the rogatory with the Secretary of the State's office as a foreign condition of state, as an amicus curiae, as a friend. So I'm giving closure on what it is that I'm articulating, so that there's no outside threat when they come up to talk to me about that which I have done. Is that we're in the middle of setting up our sea lanes, our postal route. And you do this under a post road treaty and a postal route. And when we went to the Benjamin Franklin Post Office, this is what Benjamin Franklin did. He did all the surveying for closure on the land, setting up the description for ley lines, all running through the Benjamin Franklin Post Office. But a really solitary thing about the Benjamin Franklin Post Office, it's the only post office where there's no flag flying on the outside, because it's nativity for the cargo of words for contract to give closure on values of fee for freight. When David and I went down there, it's the first thing we were looking at outside the building. There's no flag flying, so they're not recruiting contract. Because the contract is already set when you walk in the door with the state flag of Pennsylvania and the Title IV flag hanging up over right across from the mailman. So it's a very, very fun, I mean, when you know what you're doing and you can explain that it's cargo of words that are being needed there, that's why they were going to be shut down. So when we went in and filed the salvage on them, we knew the secrets of why. So when we went back into the, remember I told you we went back to the Benjamin Franklin Post Museum, he was using the word post road as an adjective pronoun on all his contracts. So when you file for your mailbox rule, you want to do it under a postal route, because you want to send up a location to where you can, for better lack of words, receive your freight way bills, your postage stamps. And at that point, you have specific timelines and duties for your bills and for the things that you are currently engaged in your day-to-day life. And anything that does not come at you, incorrect communication, parsing, syntax, grammar, if you don't have a contract with it, then you can go make your statement for your mail fraud at that point. Because then you're being correct and the post office has closure on it. So when you fill out your original change of address with the postal system, you use punctuation on when you claim who you are. At that point, then you're giving closure under the Magnus and Moss rescission timeline, 1975 rescission, under 3-day notice of who you are, where you're going to be, where your postal route's going to be, and you've paid fee for freight for the transportation of the bills of the ladings or your postage stamps in and out of your domicile or your mailbox. Sometimes you can set up a mailbox like at a UPS store, and this will also apply. You just would take off the word domicile, and you replace domicile with postal route.
Aren't there forms in Eververbs?
There are, but they're not going to accept it any other way because they can't traverse in fiction, because you are a postal employee from cradle to grave. The answer is correct. Yeah, their forms are. You can syntax them and you can follow yours there in Quantum. That also works as well.
What we do is we'll take both of them and we'll bond them together with super glue, and our fact always overrides their fiction. So they'll move everything through for what they understand in their language, but we still haven't traversed because we've syntaxed their fiction and put it in Quantum.
Correct. And then we've also autographed the stamp, which makes us postmaster of that document. When they cancel it, it's consignee, consignor. At that point, you're the only one who can articulate who you are. There's your contract to communicate.
And then, like, on your home, have your address numbers. Shouldn't you then put a tilde, like top of your garage?
Yeah, if you have changed it correct, yes, you would.
Should.
Yes, on your mailbox as well. And you want to pay your property taxes, and you make sure you do it correct as well. So it's important you pay your property tax. Yes, those are. Okay. So you set up your postal route, your shipping, and at that point you have your freight way bills, your transit way bills, and your switching way bill stations. And this is what's happening. So now when you go to court, and the fiction courts are trying to correspond with you, if they don't have it correct, you take your notification to your territory's port authority, and you give them closure about the guidelines for your mailbox and what's to come there. Courthouse is a foreign vessel and dry dock. Their contracts are only good for 5 miles, or for 12 miles, I apologize, 12 miles. So what we do, or what I do, is I claim my postal route as a foreign trade zone under transit, switching, and freight waybill, and I claim it as a foreign trade zone because I'm moving foreign bills of the ladings from point A to point B, and I claim it under nautical air miles because my foot never touches the ground.
You know what happened in Maui? We brought out the 12-mile limit to shut down the sheriff's department.